All right, we are live. Good morning, everyone. Firstly, thanks for joining this wonderful session on self-serve transformations with DBT projects on Snowflake. I know there is like a bunch of keywords there. Firstly, transformations, self-served, and DBT projects and Snowflake. There's like so much to learn today. Welcome to the show, and I'm I have with me Manuela Wade, who's a product manager at Snowflake, who's built this fantastic DBT projects for us to use on Snowflake. So you hear from her all about why do we need DBT projects and why should I be excited to have that within Snowflake? And how do you get started? Like, let's see a fun demo that she's built for us. And that's it. Welcome, Manuela, to the show. I'm super excited.
Thank you, Vino. I'm super excited to share about DBT projects on Snowflake. We're and hearing feedback from customers.
Uh-huh. Yep. I think you jumped right into it, but my question was, why are we talking about DBT projects today? Like, what's exciting? Why should we be
Yeah.
excited?
So we've been chatting with a lot of customers, and very consistently here we hear about these three big challenges that customers face with data engineering. First, they see the value of data, they want to get more value out of their data, but it's hard to quickly onboard teams. There's often a variety of tools that are involved, there's a steep learning curve. They're looking for something that's simpler for more teams to onboard, to build data pipelines and derive value from their data, but they want something that's simpler as well as governed. As I mentioned, oftentimes there's a variety of tools that you have to maintain. If you are using DBT core open source libraries, you are responsible for setting up your own orchestrator and compute, and it's just a burden for many of these teams. And then lastly, when you do have multiple systems, you need to grab log files and status from a variety of places and stitch it all together. So it's really hard to get a sense of what's the state of my data, my pipeline, and how can I quickly identify and resolve issues. So
I
we're
think
looking to make that all easier.
I was going to say, I don't think troubleshooting or debugging pipeline is any amount of fun in our daily jobs as data
Yes.
engineers. So I'm super excited. But then I don't think everybody here probably has worked with DBT. Maybe do you want to get started with what exactly is DBT?
Yes, that's a great place to start. So DBT stands for Data Build Tool. We're bundling the open source libraries from DBT Core. And what this enables you to do is it brings the software development best practices into data pipeline development. And that's often been a gap that we've seen across the industry. What a lot of customers like to use about DBT, it just really makes it easy for you to manage the data, be able to easily build transforms and collaborate with other team members. So just some of the core concepts around DBT, you have your source data that you are building transforms and basically creating data that is usable for your business. And those are the models, the derived data that you're developing. And then you see all these purple dots. These are data quality checks that you can integrate into your data to ensure that you have good data, you're propagating good data for downstream consumers. And so you see that it's just very easy to manage all of this data, build transforms, build data quality tests directly into your data modeling.
hmm I think data quality is a common challenge that is sort of persistent across all the data teams. And I'm sure this is more than a reason for folks to get excited about DBT. But when you say DBT projects on Snowflake, what does it mean? Like, tell us more about it.
Yeah. So, as you saw from the prior slide, what were the primary three challenges that we were looking to solve? What we hear is customers want a self-serve, fully managed environment, which really enables them to focus on building data engineering pipelines rather than managing infrastructure. They want to have observability on the pipelines that they built so that they can build trust in that data. Governance, having a single data and security access model is important for both across your data and your pipeline. And then lastly, having a highly reliable, available system that you can count on to run these business critical data transformations.
Gotcha. And can you also tell us what is DBT projects available natively on Snowflake mean, and maybe a life cycle of a DBT project on Snowflake?
Yes, exactly. So again, like as we chatted about earlier, one of the great things about DBT is bringing the software development best practices into pipeline development. And so you could see DBT projects in Snowflake is there to provide support across the entire pipeline development process, from build to testing, deploying, scheduling, and monitoring. And it's this full loop. So we have this end-to-end capabilities for you to build and then all the way to monitoring your data pipelines. And the real value with bringing DBT natively onto Snowflake is, again, to reduce the burden on customers such that they can focus on building more data pipelines and really getting faster time to data insights.
Mm-hmm. This is interesting. If I can maybe summarize this, from a developer's point of view, a data engineer's point of view, I've always I think it's sort of like a widely known understanding that we need to bring the software engineering best practices into the data world.
Yeah.
So how do you bring it? I think data like DBT totally helps us do that. But then just because we want to use DBT to enable these best practices around data engineering, now it becomes more complex because now I'm managing DBT core infrastructure and Snowflake and an external orchestrator, trying to have multiple systems. So having the DBT projects available natively in Snowflake makes it end-to-end experience for data engineering super, I guess, robust and easy to get started. Is it fair to say?
Exactly. And we're able to leverage some of these well-known industry-wide best practices in building your data pipelines, and then leveraging the power of the Snowflake platform, right, to provide this end-to-end experience for customers.
Gotcha. This is fantastic. I'm excited. You're enough talking. Let's
Yeah.
go to the demo. Show us the demo. I'm sure all of us are excited.
Absolutely. I'm excited to show. So I'll set a little context. So what I'm going to be showing you is you're going to see the interface for Workspaces, which is the new native integrated development environment for Snowflake for you to do more data engineering. And then we'll focus on some of the how do you build a DBT-based pipeline on Snowflake, schedule that, and then the monitoring of it. So we'll start just to give a little context on the scenario for the demo. So we're leveraging the Tasty Bites data set. Some of you may have used this. We often use this for Snowflake demos. So Tasty Bites is a global food truck company. They're operating across the world. And what we want to be able to do as a data engineer, I want to be able to transform this raw data that's coming from the food trucks into business-ready data sets that I can do analytics and ML and such. And so again, because this DBT project is on Snowflake, we want to support data engineer across the entire pipeline development process, from building, testing, scheduling, and monitoring. To give a little bit more context around the data model that we're using, so the Tasty Bites data set, we have the food trucks, we have menus, orders, and customer data. And we're going to be transforming that data and then building our MART data, which is going to be used for downstream analytics. So let me step into, when you come into Snowflake, and this is Snowsight, our primary UI, where you're able to build out your SQL files, create warehouses, create users. We now have this option under Projects, Workspaces. This is the Workspaces, the native IDE built into Snowflake, which is going to make it easier for you to build out any of your workloads on Snowflake. So for DBT projects, you have a couple of options. One, you can create a new DBT project where you're going to specify a role. You're going to specify the virtual warehouse that you want to be able to run on. Oftentimes, this is the same warehouse that you have other queries running on. And so what you're able to do with DBT projects on Snowflake is leverage your existing resources and probably better utilize those warehouses such that you can get better cost economics. So that's one option. The other option is maybe you've already developed some DBT projects, or maybe as a data engineer, you prefer working in your local dev environment. It's tuned just the way you like it. And so you have that option to continue working like that. And then maybe you want to just import that project into Snowflake and specify a secure connection to your Git repo, as well as authenticate against that. And what that's going to do is bring in your DBT project. And so you'll see here, for example, these are your standard DBT project YAML files where you specify where are the paths to the key files that are needed, that we're going to materialize some views in the stages and materialize tables for the marts. We can also specify your various environments that you're working in. So because we are running in Snowflake, you don't need to specify the account or the user. You just specify a role, which is used to create and run the DBT pipelines. You specify a database schema and the warehouse that you want to run on. Okay. And then you're also able to explore your data while you're building out your transform. So this is really, these go hand in hand, and having this all in one place just makes it easier for you to be able to discover, explore the data, and then you want to build out your models. So for example, you can build out your models using SQL. And you'll see here, for those of you who are familiar with DBT already, you can use Jinja to do these model references. So it just really makes it easy to be able to reference the other data that's available in your project. You can also create your transformations using Python, right? So both SQL, Python are all supported here. We mentioned earlier that you can specify data quality checks. So you'll see here that we've defined some tests, for example, that there's no null values in a column, or you can specify acceptable ranges of data. So this can be applied to your source data, to your staging, as well as your MART data. The profiles that I showed you earlier, we had a dev and a prod environment, and those are used for this drop down, so you can easily navigate across different environments. And then you're able to run the DBT command directly from within Workspaces. So while you're doing your development, you can compile, you can do tests. These are the data quality tests. Bring in package dependencies. So for example, we have defined a dependency on the DBT utils, which is a very common package that is used for some of the data quality tests. And so when you run the DBT deps within Workspaces, we'll then do a secure connection to the repo where those packages are available and bring those into your project for you. And then I wanted to show you, if you wanted to do some of these, like a DBT run, you can also specify arguments. So instead of running the entire DBT project, you can run a specific model. And so we're going to start running that. And while that's running, I'll show you a couple of other things. So when you do a DBT compile, it's going to generate a manifest file. And we utilize that manifest file to be able to show you this data lineage graph. So you know exactly what are the dependencies between the various data sets. And you could jump into a particular model. And what's also nice is you can see what is the SQL, the compiled SQL that is going to run on Snowflake. So you can see, for example, where we had Jinja model references, now those have been resolved into the actual tables. And you're able to run the SQL directly within Workspaces and also build out some visualizations just to make sure that this is the this is producing the data that you want. So for example, I've built out a chart that's showing the total sales by city. So we've done the navigation, like exploring of the data that you have access to. We built out some of the transformations. We're doing some of the DBT commands, and you can see when I did that DBT run, I selected to run just the customer loyalty metrics data model in my dev environment, and that you can see that it ran successfully. I also want to point out that as you're making changes to your DBT project files, you can also look at what changed and then push those changes back into, you can create a feature branch and then have those changes get pushed back into Git and then go through your standard CI/CD process. So once you've done all that, you've done your development of your data models, you've done testing, you've run this and make sure that's producing the data that you're wanting, then you would go ahead and deploy this project. And this creates a DBT project object in Snowflake, which is then callable. So we use this for scheduling of this within the native orchestration capability in Snowflake. But if you do choose to use an external orchestrator like a Airflow or Dagster, you're also able to call and execute this DBT project object using the Snowflake CLI. So I've deployed the project, and then I can use the native orchestration capability, create a schedule name, select how often do I want this to run, whether it's hourly, daily, or I can specify a custom complex schedule which is expressible in cron. I would specify also what are the DBT commands that I want to run, the pro environment that I'm using. And here again, you could provide arguments for those operations. So this is scheduled now and running. And then I want to check, like, what are my DBT project executions? Are they completing successfully? How do I debug? So you'll see here, this is the Tasty Bites DBT schedule that I had created. It last ran 17 minutes ago. It was successful. There were 168 prior runs, and it was running in my dev schema. But I want to go look into additional details around this. So this is the run that happened just 17 minutes ago. You can see that it ran on a small warehouse. It took about 27 seconds to run. And then this is what was the what was executed, right? So I'm calling DBT run and just running the customer loyalty metrics data model using my dev environment. I can go into more details, so I can see this trace, and it goes into every step of that execution. This is all implemented using OpenTelemetry and has been contributed back to the open source, DBT open source libraries. And I can go into one specific step. So that step took 16 seconds to run. You can see what are some of the arguments that it ran with. And this is the really nice thing. You can also easily navigate to the logs within context of that specific execution and be able to look for any issues and quickly resolve them. So that's at a high level, supporting the entire end-to-end dev data pipeline development process, from authoring to testing, deployment, and monitoring.
I think this is very cool. Thank you so much for showing us the demo. I also want to do a quick call out to the folks watching. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the comments, and we will get to the Q&A in like just a couple minutes. So send all your questions over there.
Great. One of the other things that I want to just cover really quickly is how does DBT projects on Snowflake fit into the rest of the Snowflake platform? And so what I'm showing you is just one part that is just focused just on data engineering, where you're building out your data transformations. And so DBT on Snowflake is one of the options which is available for you. You can also use dynamic tables, or you can create your own stored procedures and DML statements. So it's really, you have options to do transformations as it fits your needs. Or a lot of our rich Snowpark capabilities for building Python, Java, Scala-based transformations, or using pandas on Snowflake. And so once you've built all of those out, then you can use either the native orchestration capabilities, which is using streams and tasks, or serverless tasks for using Snowflake Managed Compute. Or you have options to continue using third-party orchestrators if you have if your use case requires that. So we try to provide self-serve capabilities that are native within Snowflake, but you have options to use the tools that serve your use case best.
Awesome. And just a quick question. This is fantastic demo, but if I'm a data engineer watching, how do I get started? What's next? And like, how do I do
Yes.
that in my own Snowflake account?
Yes. So we're really excited. DBT projects on Snowflake is going to be public preview very soon, hopefully this week. And then we welcome you to learn more uh, about DBT projects on Snowflake. There's this great demo video that you can watch on your own time, as well as viewing our blog when we go public preview. So we really look forward to you using the product and sharing feedback with us so that we can continue to make this better and serve your needs.
So it is very, very, very soon. That's exciting.
Yes.
And okay, I think I'm trying to get to the questions now. We have a couple of questions already. I think the biggest one being, to use the DBT projects on Snowflake, do I need a separate DBT license already? Or if I don't have it, can I use it in Snowflake? What does it look like?
Yes, great question. So we are bundling the open source DBT core libraries within Snowflake. So there's no license which is needed. And without having to deal with an external orchestrator, if you use the native capability, we're really trying to reduce, not only the cost of your data pipelines, but the total cost of ownership as well.
Gotcha. So no additional licensing or any other requirements needed at all.
Exactly.
Natively in Snowflake, you could just get started with it. Perfect.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the nice thing also. You saw how easy it was, like when you went into Workspaces, you can just immediately get started. There was no setup of what library version to use, all of the dependencies which are needed. You can just get started and start getting faster insights on your data.
Yeah. And I think another question is, as somebody who is using DBT Cloud today, how do I think about DBT Cloud versus DBT projects on Snowflake? When would I use what, or are you able to talk to the differences?
Yes, absolutely. So we are building on top of the DBT core capabilities. So if there are some of the DBT cloud capabilities which you're leveraging, for example, there's DBT mesh. If you're transforming data across a variety of data platforms, so for example, you've got data in Snowflake and BigQuery, well, then you would need to continue using DBT Cloud, which provides that DBT mesh capability. Or if you're using features like their semantic layer to build like consistent metrics, those are again DBT Cloud specific functionality, which is not supported in DBT projects. But these can often go hand in hand. Like we see customer teams who are building out their DBT transformations using DBT projects on Snowflake, and then if they need advanced features, they would go to DBT Cloud.
Gotcha. So basically, for both DBT Cloud and DBT projects on Snowflake, they're both built on this open DBT core project. So any additional functionalities that we would need are like sort of built into it. But the sort of the base that we're all working off of is DBT core. And depending on the feature set, you use either or.
Exactly.
Awesome. And I think someone who's new to DBT, oh, Sridhar, And he says it looks very similar to dynamic tables. How does it like? How is it different from dynamic tables? Or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So, and these work really, they work together really well. So the recommendation is if you have some fairly standardized transformations that you do, you're really just materializing data from a source into a target, then we do recommend using dynamic tables for that ease of use. You're not going to have to define that logic as a lot as your data schema changes, dynamic tables evolves with it, right? So we do recommend using dynamic tables if you're doing your standard materialization. If you do have more custom transformation logic, which is needed, that's where DBT projects is going to serve you really well.
Gotcha.
And you
Because
can use these together.
of course, because I do remember in the Snowflake, the Snowsight, as you were running through it, in the
Yes.
transformations bucket, I saw DBT projects, dynamic tables,
Mhm.
streams, and tasks. So they're all helping you with the transformation. But if it's a standard, simple transformation, you might as well create a dynamic table and sort of define the transformations over there. But if it's a more custom, complex, or multi-step transformation, you might want to think about using DBT and eventually materialize the output of the DBT model into dynamic tables, and they can also work together.
Exactly. Very well put.
Awesome. And I think there is other question from Christopher about the upstream and downstream dependencies. Will they be supported?
Yeah, great question. So as you saw in the DAG that we had here on our project, oops, let me get back to my project. Yeah. So yeah, this is more focused on what is directly involved in this data transformation. We are looking to enable visibility into the upstream and downstream sources. Um, and that's really leveraging more of the power of the Snowflake platform to be able to start building out this larger dependency graph. So
Hmm,
that's something that we're working towards probably post GA.
awesome. Okay. And another question from Janin about the orchestration. If people use Airflow to run DBT across models every day, so how would I think about Airflow, DBT, and Snowflake today?
Absolutely. So we had on this slide. So we certainly encourage folks to use our native orchestration capabilities just for the ease of use, and it's one less system that you have to be managing. But if, for example, you do have your use case requires orchestrating things that are outside of Snowflake, then you would need to use an external orchestrator like an Airflow or Dagster. And you'll remember when we were building out the last step of building out our DBT pipeline was to deploy, right? And that created that DBT project object that you're able to call from your external orchestrator in order to trigger that. So
Mhm.
that would be using our Snowflake CLI. And you'll see in the DBT projects documentation, once that's published, when we go public preview, we have an example of how you would do that.
Awesome. So yes, if you do want to use Airflow, you will be able to work with Airflow and DBT projects together. But say if you do not, how do you think about orchestrating DBT projects? We have Snowflake native tasks that can help you with the orchestration as well. So you don't have to worry about orchestration, either sides are covered. That's fantastic.
Exactly.
And if I can, okay, I think Subhashini has a question. If I can use existing projects that I already have in DBT, is it enough that I simply connect to the repository, or do I need to create an integration, or is there an additional step involved?
Yeah. So if you have checked in, or you're managing, you're versioning your DBT project files, which we absolutely recommend that you do, then all you would need to do is to establish a secure connection to your Git repo, and we would be able to import your DBT project. So you can create a workspace from a Git repo, right? Supply the repository URL. I think I still have that here. And then have a secure connection and authentication to your Git repo. And we would be able to pull that in. And that's what I've done here for this Tasty Bites example, which is also in our Getting Started tutorial. There will also be a quick start that's published once we go public preview, which has this same example using the Tasty Bites data set. So you can just quickly get started, test this out, and then build out your own.
All right, I think we have just one last question. We're over, but maybe this is the last question for Jay, which is there a way we could, like a business user can review the data and highlight the data issues? I think this is more on the testing side of it, like how do I run a DBT test? But DBT
Yeah.
test is run by a data engineer at the end of the day to do the validation of data. But is there a way business user can take a peek at the data and evaluate or like identify issues?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple of ways that you could do this. I mean, one is, building out your data pipelines together with the business user. And like I'd shown here, how it's very easy to be able to define these data quality tests that you want to, and you can build custom ones as well. So there's like some of these that are provided through DBT utils, right? But you can build out your custom data quality checks and have those easily integrated to be able to test your source, your stage, and your MART data. I mean, we are hoping that it's easy to use workspaces and have these built-in integrations with DBT, which would make it really easy for business users as well to be able to specify, be able to run these tests themselves as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think also the best practice would be, although it's the data engineer who's defining these tests, but the
Mhm.
numbers, for example, for like a range of numbers for a specific KPI or a metric
Exactly.
comes from the business. So I guess working with
Mhm.
your data counterpart to really define what these tests should be would be the some more long-term sustainable way to ensure data quality in your organization. Well, I guess with that, we are at the end of the show. Thank you so much for firstly talking all things DBT and why should we be excited about it. And secondly, how do we use DBT projects in Snowflake? And thirdly, telling us that the public preview is coming up very, very soon. So stay tuned, everybody. You will get a quick start and anything else that you will need to get hands on with DBT projects very soon. But meanwhile, check out the Snowflake demo and read the blog and stay very excited. And thanks, Manuela. Thanks for joining us. And thanks, everybody, for joining us today, too. I'll see you in the
Thank
next.
you, Vino.